Hey everyone, welcome to this new conversation with me, your host Karan Malhotra. This is LinkedIn for Leaders, a show that we do every week to help leaders have clarity on their personal narrative, build their personal brand, show up as their best selves. And we do this through having interesting conversations with experts in various domains. Today, I'm very privileged to invite to the conversation Eliza Yvette Esquivel. Hey Eliza, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Karan. It's a delight to be here.
Fantastic. So I'm going to jump into this and give you a quick introduction about Eliza. So Eliza is a strategic foresight advisor and sole purpose coach dedicated to helping leaders and individuals create a future aligned with wisdom, purpose, and possibility. She is the founder of Love and Order, a consulting practice that helps organizational leaders design protopian futures, moving beyond dystopian narratives to build systems that are regenerative, heart centered, and visionary. She's also the founder of Radical Sabbatical Consulting, where she guides high achieving professionals through soul aligned career and life transformations that break them free from outdated success models. With over 20 years in global marketing and advertising, Elisa held senior leadership roles at companies like Microsoft and Mondelez, as well as at top creative agencies. But her path has never been conventional. She took a 2 year sabbatical mid career to realign with her deeper purpose. Spent 6 years living in an ashram in her 20s and maintains a long standing daily meditation practice that continues to shape her approach to work and life. Now, through her work, she helps leaders see beyond the noise, trust their deeper intelligence, and step into the future with clarity, courage, and heart. With that, welcome again, Elisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Karan. And, I'm really excited about this conversation. I think that this moment in time is asking a lot from leaders. And I'm really excited that you and I are sort of addressing it together. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise, I'm privileged to have you. And as you've seen some of the other episodes, and I invariably say this, in most conversations, that these 30 minutes go by very quickly. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump into the first question.
Great.
So, like you said, we're here at a time when there's tremendous change all around, geopolitical, social, technological, with AI. With much of this happening simultaneously, it's a challenging time to be a leader today. What do leaders need to do to better frame their vision and share it with the world today while also navigating this changing landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the short answer is it's an inside job. Broadly speaking, I want to touch on a couple of themes. One is self-auditing. The other is meaning making, and then obviously, mature decision making, especially when it comes to the advancements of technology and AI. So, as you said, we're in this moment, and what we need from leaders is more than just messaging or clarity or performance. What we're really needing is depth. So it's not more noise, it's not more talking, it's more meaning, and we're in this moment where so much is breaking down and there's so much terminology around it, the meta crisis, the poly crisis, even the poly opportunity, but these framings kind of keep things focused on the fragmentation and on the breakdown, and so I tend to shy away from them in terms of framing, because I think that they lead to overwhelm. They're outward facing, and they focus more on the collapse than on the opportunity for creation. So first of all, I think, in sort of framing a vision, focusing on the language is really important, and deciding for yourself, what language suits the meaning that you're trying to make. But for me, as I said, the way that I see this moment is more of as a threshold. And I see it as sort of an opportunity to be creative and to be proactive, which is why I talk a lot in Love and Order about a protopian future and that sort of framing. Because, it's not utopia, it's not dystopia, which we're kind of living in right now and always being served up by science fiction, but it's really thinking about the best possible future within reach, and shaping that future with your imagination and your responsibility and your care. And almost all of the things that I talk about when I talk about a protopian future are things that already exist now. We already have the seeds of free energy. We already have the seeds of solving the sustainability crisis. We all already have lots of examples of, societies or communities that are functioning and giving, sharing, and inclusion. We're just not focusing on them right now. So I think, part of it, part of framing the vision, as I said, it's choosing the right language, but it's also choosing the right focus and acknowledging this threshold moment, acknowledging it for yourself, because it's asking something personal from each of us. It's asking us to really, audit our own reality and ask ourselves what we've done to contribute to the state of things. What role are we as individuals and we as leaders playing in this? And, what in me has contributed to the state of things? And what do I need to change in my worldview or behavior to meet the moment with integrity? So these are some of the questions that I think leaders need to be asking as they're sort of framing their vision. And that's why I talk a lot about this heart-centered leadership, because the heart-centered leadership isn't about the messaging, but it starts with the self-examination. We're not just leading organizations, we're shaping consciousness. And that's really, really important to understand, is sort of, you as a leader, it's that Maya Angelou saying, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember the way that you made them feel. They're gonna remember the energy that you hold. They're gonna remember the frequency, the level of awareness, the level of conscious, the level of integrity. And so I think that's really, really important. And for me, there was a big turning point in my life in 2018 when I was on that radical sabbatical, and I was asked to speak professionally at an industry conference for strategists. And I gave this talk called Altered States of Planning. And it was the first time that I was speaking, not in an affiliation for a company, but for my own voice and my own view. And that was really, really profound, because it showed me what it feels like to speak from a place of alignment versus from a place of affiliation. So, part of, I think, what leaders need to go through is give themselves permission to do that, to find a way to sort of think about what they really think about things independent of their professional context, but just themselves as human beings. And when I did that in that Altered States of Planning, that's when I started noticing things like the disconnection between tech acceleration and consciousness. When I started noticing things like the imagination gap, when I started looking at things like the parasocial swirl that we live in media. So, those kinds of things sort of, that was a threshold moment for me of realizing, like, wow, if I take a minute to stop and step outside of everything that's expected of me and of looking externally and just look within and ask myself, how I feel about things and what I'm really seeing, it opens up a whole new vista. So I think, leaders really have an opportunity to do that. So, when I talk to or work with C-suite leaders now, or impact investors or founders, I always try to get them to start with coming back into a place of coherence within themselves. Because the future isn't, we don't need charismatic speakers. We have plenty of those. There's lots of noise in the system. There's lots of content, being created, around there. What we really need is that sort of clear seeing, that emotional, mature decision making. That's what we need. And then the last thing I'll touch on, because you just mentioned it, is, the AI bit. I have a piece, a carousel that I put on LinkedIn, how AI sees us. And I put forward really my perspective that, AI is just a mirror. It's just reflecting our consciousness. So it's not going to save us, but the way we engage with it is going to reveal who we really are as humans. So those are some of my thoughts about what's needed in this moment in time.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for setting the context with that, Eliza. And thank you, Ariel, for sharing these two links of Love and Order and Radical Sabbatical Consulting. Encourage everyone to sort of click on those and follow the page, and also check out some of the amazing work that Eliza is doing. So Lisa, actually, before moving to the next thing, some of what you said over there, right? Like, for example, when you say people need to, or leaders need to be clear of what they are putting into the consciousness. I might be paraphrasing over here.
Yes, yes, yeah.
But, so if to some leaders that can sound a bit woo woo, right? So I mean, what does that mean? And if you can also put it in context with when you say protopian futures, what does that mean? If there's a link between the two of those.
Yeah, I mean, there is a link. So, consciousness, very broadly defined, is just being aware. It's your level of awareness of your external surroundings and of yourself. And, it's really about making choices and having a very clear filter of what you're letting into what you're holding in your mind, what beliefs you're holding, what perspective you're holding, and really sort of choosing very conscientiously to not hold on to certain beliefs or ideas that may be repetitive, destructive, retrograde, and to choose to focus your awareness on the things that are more progressive, that are more heart-centered, that are more valuable to the future of humanity. And in doing that, that's the exact act and set of behaviors that can lead to a protopian future, right? To a future. Right. So if leaders are really sort of more choiceful and sort of recognize where they're going on autopilot and consuming a narrative that is going to keep humanity in a sort of extractive, destructive mode of being, and grab a hold of themselves and say, actually, no, I have a choice. I don't have to participate. It's just an ideology like any other ideology. And I'm going to focus my conscious awareness on the things that I think are going to lead us to a better place, not just in our business, not just me as a leader in the way that I'm perceived, but for humanity at large. And this is the broadening of the vision that I think is needed. So there's a direct correlation between a leader stopping and taking stock of their own internal awareness and making those choices, and us being able to move toward a better future and a protopian future.
Amazing. And that links to the other point that you mentioned about alignment and affiliation, because so much of, I mean, like in typical rooms, right? You go into a room and people are saying, meet X person, studied here, worked here, XYZ. So everyone's giving their resume, right? And quite often the same thing happens on LinkedIn as well, where people are just sort of talking about themselves, talking about the affiliations. And a lot of what you talked about right now is around alignment. I mean, would you say there are a couple of things that can help leaders keep in mind while the affiliation doesn't go away, but how is that they can zone in a little bit more on the alignment side?
Well, it's actually very simple. It's focus on your feelings and follow the feeling.
Okay.
I think a big part of what is goes on in capitalism, you know what I mean, like it's very, especially I fell into it too. I kind of was like a cheerleader for capitalism and for all of my companies, and you get into this external modality, right? But the important thing is to come back into your own self, into your own embodiment, and say, like, what am I feeling about this? How do I, because we don't make so much room for feelings, in the workplace. It's like, okay, yeah, you come into work, you put on your work hat, you can have feelings on the weekends, you know what I mean? And actually that's not how it should be. It should really be about, understand, because the more you get into your feelings, not only will you know what doesn't feel right, and what doesn't sit right with you, but also you'll be able to tap in more to what actually excites you and what lights you up. And that's really where the alignment comes in for leaders.
Amazing. And when you say feelings, is that similar to like what people refer to as gut instinct, or is that different?
It's so interesting because I think people have split hairs between gut instinct and intuition, and you know what I mean. And I think also it's just like we get used to feeling a certain way. This is one thing that I can help draw for those people who are listening. It's like we get used to feeling stressed, feeling worried, feeling concerned, being hypervigilant. I mean, these are feelings that we are familiar with, right? But there are other feelings that, that we need to get familiar with, feelings like feeling curious, feeling open-minded, feeling relaxed, feeling playful. So these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, is there's a range of emotional sentiments that we need to allow ourselves so that we can be more whole and integrated. And then that is what actually will help us have a better radar for what makes us feel good and what doesn't make us feel good.
Yeah. So alignment, feeling more centered, and therefore allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. And Mali very nicely shared her feeling, which is, she says, love this explanation as consciousness as awareness, Elisa. So resonant and so necessary in this moment.
Thank you, Miley.
And with that, Elisa, you work with leaders as a strategic foresight advisor and soul purpose coach. And your company is called Radical Sabbatical Consulting. I love this name so much. It's so unique. I've never come across something like this. And I have to say, that's probably one of the reasons. So I found Eliza online when I was actually helping another leader in the network that we both sort of were part of. And she said, I love Elisa's, her expression, the way she talks. And then I came about this, and I'm so, thankful in some ways that the circle comes around, we're having this conversation. But to come back to this, your company is called Radical Sabbatical Consulting. Some of this word framing isn't conventional. What would you say are a few things that leaders can keep in mind when wanting to share maybe an unconventional idea or vision?
Yeah. Again, there are going to be a few things that I talk about here. I'm going to keep banging my little drum about coherence, but also the importance of self-belief and inviting community into a dialogue. So, because I think that can help you. So, when leaders want to share something unconventional, 9 times out of 10, it's not because they don't have a good strategy or a good, understanding of audience, but it's because it's emotional. They feel, it's like they feel concerned. Am I going to lose credibility? Will people understand me? Are they going to get this? Am I allowed to care this much, this publicly? And obviously the answers to all those questions need to be, yes, you can care this much. Actually, this is what we're being called to do right now as leaders, is to show that part of ourselves, to show our passion, to show our care. So, what I try and say is that, your idea doesn't need to be safe. It just needs to be true. Okay, so even if it's, even if it's something that's on the edge, and again, it's like, that's why I wasn't scared to go out with Radical Sabbatical Consulting. Why? Because I had taken a 2-year sabbatical myself. And in order to make people feel more comfortable with the fact that I was taking so much time off, I jokingly referred to it as a radical sabbatical to make other people feel comfortable. But I have a sense of self-confidence going out in the world talking about something that seems so unconventional because I have personally experienced it. So I think that, you really need to, to go out and have your own experiences and talk about your own experiences. And that is what will make you feel comfortable about being unconventional, because we need the people who have these unconventional experiences to be the one who, who talks about it and who normalizes, these kinds of things. So it's really about being in coherence with yourself, having that self-belief, and then also testing out your talk track, or testing out what you're going to be talking about or saying, by inviting conversations with others. It can be
Okay.
sort of like one-on-one, and LinkedIn is a perfect place, really, quite honestly, to to test out your unconventional narratives. And they say you have to say something 7 times before somebody gets it. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to think like, oh, we said it once and only one person liked it. Man, I think that we have to sort of remember, like, people are busy. People they're distracted. They don't remember things, and so you have to keep saying the same things in different ways over and over again, and see if you can engage a dialogue and create community around unconventional ideas, and that will also help you develop more of that self-belief and bravery. So I have sort of like a 3-part lens, that hopefully can be practical for people to sort of walk away from. So the first is lead from integration, not imitation. So, I think the important thing is, like, don't shape your vision or what you're saying based on trends. That's sort of like, I mean, we're always looking for market fit, and we're always looking for, for relevance. But when you look for the relevance on the outside, that's when you get out of that inner integration. So really start from, from the inside, with your own story, with that lived experience. The second thing that I would say is test your vision in the field of experience. So, ideas don't get traction in theory, they take root in the body. And only you are going to, the more you say something that you are originally uncomfortable saying, you say it several times, then suddenly your body relaxes and you're used to saying the thing. So, actually like practicing expressing that, and creating these sort of like lived experiments where you find opportunities, when in the right time or the right moment or in the right group of people to play out speaking about some of these unconventional things that you're thinking about turning into something bigger. And then, the last thing is sort of frame your message as an invitation, not as a performance. I think, there's like, we're moving into an era where, people are stepping more into their individual sovereignty. We're going to have more people going out on their own, platforms. And the basis of all of this new exchange that we're going to be experiencing in the new economy is going to be about generosity and reciprocity. Right? These things are going to come more online. And so when you're thinking about communicating a message, like, we used to think like sage on a stage, like we have to broadcast out, but actually it's more about sharing your perspective, sharing your heart, sharing your vision, and inviting other people into a conversation, into a dialogue, and co-creating that unconventional vision with other people who share resonance with it. It's in my opinion, I mean, we talk about these things to a degree in the realm of social media, but I think that they're going to become more, they're going to become more prevalent in terms of the way that we think about what we need to be doing and communicating as leaders.
Amazing. And I'm just, just curious, because we both have a deep sort of spiritual practice. There's also this belief that we've stepped into this age of Aquarius also, right? So is all of this connected to that in some ways also, as one perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I could give an entire talk on astrofuturism and Pluto and Aquarius, and it's a big bag of beans. But I would just say, like, when you look at the symbol of Aquarius, it's the 2 squiggly lines, right? And to me, I interpret that as frequency. It's about the collective and collectives of people sharing frequency and sharing resonance and getting on the same, frequency. So, all of the things that I talk about, like following the feeling and, what I mean, and sort of like being in alignment, these are all very Aquarian themes. And on one level, I think as we're at the beginning of this epic, they still might sound woo-woo, but I think much less so than they did 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And in 5 years, it's going to be what we talk about. I mean, already we saw, like, in the last, couple of years, the millennials, everything was about the vibe. And everybody talks about the vibe. People were sensing that we were sort of moving into this modality. So it's very much part of the zeitgeist.
That's amazing. So just to recap, integration versus imitation, embodying the practice, And the third one
So
again?
it's kind of testing it, testing your field of vision, you know what I mean? And then also not treating it as a broadcast message, but rather an invitation into a dialogue.
Invitation into a dialogue. Yeah, that's so important. And like we said, this time goes by very quickly. So we have the last 5 minutes, and this is one more invitation for anyone in the audience. If you'd like to share a quick comment or a question, please do so. Of course, if you share it later, we will respond to it in the comments as well. But I'm really excited about this one. The fact that you're writing a book, Eliza, about reclaiming one's power. So, what called you to write this book?
Well, I mean, I always wanted to be a writer. And, I kind of fell into that trap that a lot of people do. It says, you'll never make money being a writer. You got to do this, you got to do that. So I kind of set it aside. But I always had in my mind, one day I will return back to this. So I originally thought, and they say write about what you know, right? So I was like, okay, well, and I had lots of ideas for things that I could write about. It's like, well, why don't I write about this radical sabbatical? So I originally started writing about the radical sabbatical, and I started working with a book coach whose name is Suzanne Kingsbury. She's absolutely amazing. She has something called the Gateless Writing Academy. And as she and I were working through what I was writing about, what we discovered is that what I was actually writing about was power. And sort of my own reckoning with power, and sort of like the fact that I had in my life sort of like taken on what we've all been taught about power, which is it's external, it's outside of us. You have to go stand next to it, you have to go be close to it, sort of like all these kinds of things. And instead, what I learned in my radical sabbatical and the experience that I went through was really starting to understand that real power is presence, it's perception, it's something that's innate within you. It's about that inner alignment that I've been talking about. And so as I started to write the book, one simple thing is that, the word power comes from the Latin potus, and it means to be able. It's just about your capabilities. And many of those capabilities are our inner capabilities. We have so much vast potential as human beings that we don't tap into, in large part because we're too externally focused and we're not doing enough of sort of the inner inquiry to find out what we are really capable of. And so, the book is really my story about coming into my own understanding of power, but it draws upon traditional, perspectives of power that are what I perceive as sort of like the wrong view. And then also, sort of looks at historical traditions and culture traditions that had the more accurate perspective, like the Egyptians, for example. They refer to power as Sekhem. And that it's really, it's like a spiritual force that flows when we are in right relation. The Mayans had in their cosmology there was Nawal, which was the unseen field of human potential. So what I'm trying to bring forward in the book is a kind of like, the book is being written for anybody who's ever pursued power because they wanted to make the world a better place. Somebody like me, you know what I mean? But really taking them through the journey of what power is and what it isn't, and sort of how to access it. And then, one other thing that I'll say is that, power isn't something that you climb toward. It's something that you return to. It's something that you have always had. You've just been sort of like mind tricked out of thinking that you actually, have it. So it's really about reclaiming that presence. And the beautiful thing is that, intuitively, I didn't think that Love and Order and Radical Sabbatical Consulting and the book were so closely linked, but now I realize that they are. And, and that the Protopian future and this threshold moment is the global frame and the reason why we need to sort of come into more resonance and access our own innate power. And the reason is because we cannot build a protopian future with a dystopian definition of power. I cannot emphasize this enough, that, that these fundamental beliefs that we have, if we have the wrong ideas about what power is, even when we're trying to do social impact work or sustainability work, we are going to miss the mark if we haven't sort of evolved into a more profound definition of power that comes from the inside out.
Wow, that's amazing. We have some thoughts from the audience, and we're also right about on time. But I won't read out what's been shared. So Ariel says, "This has been very insightful. I'm looking forward to your book." Thank you both. As am I, Ariel. I'm really looking forward to the book as well. Marina says, "Thank you for holding space for us. A lot of great questions for myself. I will keep contemplating." I love how Eliza Yvette Esquivel spoke about the need for more depth and choosing the right focus. I would love to hear how we help ourselves and the leaders around us to guide them toward focusing on our inner depth. It is a personal inner journey. How can we as a community better support each other in this journey inward? If you have a quick thought on that, Lisa.
Well, first I will say that I belong to IMA, which stands for Impact Makers, and it's a global network of social impact entrepreneurs led by Lily Graff. So I would say there's already a global group of people who are on this page who are wanting to come together and form community. So I would point people to IMA. And also, there are other organizations and frameworks that I'm very fond of. One is the Inner Development, the IDG's Inner Development Toolkit. And so you can look that up online, IDG Toolkit, Inner Development Guide. And these are the people who've realized that we won't reach the sustainability development goals unless we do the inner work. And then the other thing I would draw your attention to is the Collective Imagination Toolkit by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, which also has a lot of examples about how people can come together and dream this new reality into existence in a very sort of heart-centered and present way. So there are resources out there in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and if more come up, we'll definitely share those in the comments. But we're right on time. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation, Lisa. If people have to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Follow my Love and Order business page. Follow my Radical Sabbatical Consulting LinkedIn business pages. I'm happy to talk to anyone who wants to further the conversation, create community, or work together. So I'm easy to find. All on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, drop us a comment or feel free to DM either one of us. We do this conversation, LinkedIn for Leaders, every Thursday, every week. I'll keep you posted. Follow me along, and you'll know who the next guest is going to be. Thank you again so much, Lisa, for joining us today, and thank you everyone.